Hey guys, just before we get into this, just want to clarify something, because often when we talk about this topic, there'll be somebody that will pop up and say, Japanese people can speak Japanese people don't have to speak English, and Japan's Japanese, and similar comments to that. Just want to clarify that we've never said in any of our 5,000 videos that Japanese people should speak English. Never said it, never thought it, right? Never suggested it. So it's not us that say it, it's occasionally the Japanese government will say it, and various Japanese leaders will say it, that it's important. But we never say it. So all we're doing is addressing the fact. And the fact is that over the years we have talked about this a few times, because what happens is there's a few different organisations that test the English competency level around the world. So they'll pick a few thousand random people in each country and just test the English competency of the people, usually in the English as a second language countries. So not countries that speak English as a first language, it's the countries who have English not as a first language. So the first time we talked about this was, who knows, 10, 12 years ago maybe, and I think at that stage Japan was like 36th, ranked about 36 out of all those countries. And then we made a video about it later when they were ranked about 40 something, and then we made a video about it when they were ranked 60 something, and I think last time was like 68. Anyway, recently they did the test again, and they found that Japan is now ranked 92nd. So I'll put, if I remember, I'll put up on the screen right now the countries, some of the countries that are ranked above Japan. Can't put all 91 of them because there's not enough room on the screen for all the countries that are better at English than Japan is. Right? So yeah, it continues to plummet. So there's probably a few reasons for that. Probably the main one is that the majority of Japanese people just don't think English is important. And in fairness to them, probably most of them are right. You know, most of the people that we know have grown up in Japan, they've gone to school in Japan, they've got a job working for some company, and probably can go through their whole life without ever using English at all. If they don't want to, you know, if they want to travel, it's possible for them to go and do tours anywhere, well, most places in the world with a Japanese tour company, and cruise around in a bus with a Japanese tour guide who explains everything to them. And so it is possible. I mean, we've got most of our family members, you know, my in-laws can't speak English, and some of them have travelled, and that's what they do. When they travel to another country, they do it with JTB or one of the other Japanese tour companies, and cruise around in a bus with a bunch of other Japanese people and a tour guide who can speak the local language and Japanese, and they just never need to use English. So for most Japanese people, it's true. They don't need English, and not interested, you know. And in fact, I think a lot of Japanese people and a lot of the Japanese leaders quite enjoy the fact that they live in a bubble where most people don't communicate with people outside Japan, you know. The exceptions are, there are various Japanese companies that over the years have started to make it a requirement that anybody who wants a job with them has to have a level of English. So for example, Rakuten, JAL, Japan Airlines, ANA, All Nippon Airlines, what else? There's a few, some of the car companies, Toyota, Mitsubishi, there's a few companies like that will have a requirement that if people want to get a job with them, that they have to have a certain level of English. Usually they use the TOEIC test for that. So they'll say that they have to have, I think JAL has a TOEIC requirement of 650 or something like that, which is test of English for international communications is the TOEIC test. And 650 is not a real high score either, but that's what they expect. So there are some companies in Japan where you do need a certain level of English. Some of them you need quite a high level of English. I think it's Toyota has made their, what do they call it? I can't remember the word. the language for their company, the official language for their company is now English, which means all their meetings and all their memos and internal communication is all in English now. Might be Toyota, I'm not quite sure. But that's sort of the exception, because unless you work for one of those big sort of multinational type companies, most of the people that we know and most of our family members and so on, they just live their lives and never need English at all. And English is sort of just really, it's entertainment or it's decoration. The Japanglish videos that we make show you that, English isn't usually used for actually communicating anything. It's just sort of used as an image thing. That if they have some English in their sort of their catchphrase, happy, merry life or something, that it sort of seems very modern and cool. But the important communication with customers is always in Japanese. So the radio station might say, now news and weather, right? So here's the news and weather, and they'll say news and weather, and then the news and weather is 100% Japanese. So the only bit that's English is actually when they say news and weather, and that's because Japanese people recognize those two words. So it's the same as the written English that we see on the signs as we're driving around and that sort of thing. It's just that the non-important stuff is in English and the important stuff's all in Japanese. So the leaders, the government and the leaders recognize that English is important for Japan as far as tourism, because tourism is obviously really, really important for Japanese economy. So the leaders recognize that, and also for the big companies to do business internationally, because the exporting from Japan is extremely important for the economy too. Probably those two things are the most important aspects of Japanese economy, is the tourism coming in and the exporting, the goods going out. And to achieve those two things, of course, we need some English in Japan, don't we? So the Japanese government recognise that. So now and again they'll make some announcement, and over the years they've done a few. They had one year after one of these studies was published, there was a sort of a big talk on television, and these leaders are talking with somebody and talking about, oh yes, it's a big problem, isn't it? We need to improve the English. And so that year they decided that they were going to make it a rule that anybody that was going to teach English in the schools had to have spent a month overseas or something ridiculous like that in another country, in an English-speaking country. That was one year they said they were going to do that. Another year they said, recently, a couple of years ago, they said they were going to make it a requirement for entering university that you had to do an English test, right? So these solutions that they come up with aren't really solutions. One of the things that complicate this, even though the politicians and the leaders say, some of them say that they think English is important, most of them can't speak English themselves and have no idea about how to go about learning a second language. And probably most of them don't really believe it. They understand that English is sort of important for Japan's economy, but they don't really embrace it, because there is this underlying thing. Japan likes to protect Japan's culture and keep it the way it is, which is wonderful, by the way. I mean, it is one of the reasons Japan stays so insulated, is because the Japanese people, all their information is all internal. So it really is like living in a bubble. And we get this all the time with friends and family members and my wife and all sorts of people. When we talk about different topics, the only information they'll have about those topics is what they saw on television. I know on Japanese television with Japanese people speaking. And I've got a dentist friend of mine who's a really nice man, a very intelligent man, but he tells me all the time, on television I saw this, on television I saw that, and quite often it's just nonsense. It's just some nonsense that they put on television, and everybody believes it, and because all the information, 99% of the information or 100% of the information that most Japanese people get is all from within Japan. It's all from Japanese television or from something on the internet, from a Japanese website or another Japanese person, and it's all internal in this bubble. And so you get some weird stuff here sometimes where everybody believes something that nobody else in the world believes. You know, healthcare type subjects sometimes come up where, you know, they believe some weird thing, you know, some voodoo thing that's an internal thing, or you hear some myth. You know, we make our myths about Japan videos about what people outside Japan believe about inside. We're going to make a video one day about the myths that Japanese people have about outside Japan. And it happens all the time. You know, now and again you get some weird story on Japanese TV about something that someone saw in Australia. And they'll see it and then they'll report it like everyone in Australia does this weird thing. And then for the next 6 months, I get people asking me, oh, is it true that in Australia, you know, Santa Claus rides a surfboard every year, or, you know, something that they saw on television that they just assume is just normal, you know? And because they don't get the benefit of, you know, most of us living around the world, and, you know, something like half of the people that watch our videos, English is their second language, but our friends in Europe and our friends in all these other countries, and most Asian countries, looking at the internet and getting information from all over the world. You know, and that really opens the door then to what information you're getting and how well informed you are. Whereas a Porsche driver in front of us there, he's important. We have to keep out of his way. And, you know, I see examples of this in my own house because, my wife can't, her English level's almost zero. And so quite often when we're talking about some subject or thinking about doing something, she'll search on the internet in Japanese and she'll get a certain amount of information, and I'll search on the internet in English and I'll get loads of information from all over the world, including lots of experts. The medical thing keeps coming to mind, you know, in particular the medical thing, because I'll get information then from Mayo Clinic and from Harvard Medical School and from Oxford Medical School and from, you know, I'll be getting information on a particular topic from medical experts all over the world. When she searches in Japanese, you know, she'll get Tokyo University, she'll get some just random Japanese people that have written something on the topic, and that's where we come across these the difference between the information that you can get from the limited resources in Japanese and the information you get limited resources in English, or the information you get from the massive resources in English. You know, so just, I mean, obviously there's two sides to this. One side of it obviously is because of this bubble, that's one of the reasons why Japan is so unique, you know, and that it's maintained its culture and it stays as unique as it is because it is super insulated. Japanese people call it the island, call themselves, sometimes they'll say we're island people, or they'll talk about their island culture, and they're referring to the fact that they're insulated, which is obviously traditionally because they were living on islands, but now they still are living on an island because they're not accessing the world's information and the world's experience. Limited. It's all filtered. Anything that they get from outside Japan, for 99.9% of Japanese people, anything they get from outside Japan is filtered through a Japanese lens. So it's some story that's happened in America or in England or somewhere else that's then filtered through a Japanese news story. You know, Japanese news presenters, you know, get that information and then present it to the Japanese people. And so the end result is often quite different. You know, what I see on the internet direct from Europe or direct from the USA or direct from the UK, you know, what I see coming directly in the information I get and the information that my wife gets is different, because she's got hers through a limited source, through a Japanese filter or some Japanese news organization or some Japanese internet page or something like that. So it's just really limited, the information that they get, but see, they're happy with that. They're quite happy with that. They don't need, they don't feel like they need to do anything about that. They're quite happy with that, because that's the way it's always been, and they're happy for it to be like that, you know? So it's not going to change. It's not going to change. Again, it's one of those things in Japan, you know, change doesn't happen because they don't really want it to change. Everyone's quite happy. You know, the English to them it's sort of a bit of decoration or entertainment. You know, even the parents that send their kids off, you know, we know some people, now and again we'll come across people who tell us, oh, my boy's been going to English school for 3 years. You go, oh, really? Hey, that sounds good. Do you like English? Etto nandake, right? And then, because he can't answer in English, right? He doesn't understand the question. They don't, at the English schools usually, they don't usually learn to actually speak English or communicate in English. They just learn some English words, some English songs, some games in English, and sometimes the parents will say that, sing the song, and they'll sing some silly song in English, you know, that's what they've learned at English school. And then usually that's just more for entertainment than anything else too. You know, they'll do English for a couple of years and they'll stop doing that, and then they'll go do baseball. So they sort of group English. They don't group English in with Japanese and math and science and all those subjects. They separate it off into its own little, you know, off with art and sport and things that you can do or not do. You know, not important things that are optional. You know, there are exceptions. You know, you do come across people who are exceptions whose English is very, very good. That dentist I was talking about, actually, his English is pretty good, and often medical people, some of them, not all of them, but some of them will have a fairly high level of English, and they will spend time overseas studying perhaps, and those are the best doctors and medical people, of course, because they've got information. And again, the doctors that don't, you know, we actually saw, touching on a bit of a personal subject here, but we actually asked an old doctor once, a local doctor, about contraceptive pills, right? Contraceptive pill. And he went, oh, it's dangerous. Contraceptive pills are dangerous. If you take it, maybe you can never have a baby. And he said all these things that were like probably true about 60 years ago, you know, that the risks of contraceptive pills 60 years ago, you know, that's where he was, this old guy, because he couldn't speak English. So the only information he ever got on any topic was through the Japanese filter. And as far as he was concerned, you know, he was back 60 years ago with the contraceptive pill, and it's a bad thing, and it's terrible, and you know, it'll stop you having babies forever, and it's a bad thing. You know, and that's scary, isn't it? You know, nothing scarier than medical professionals here who don't have any outside influence, you know. So you can see it, but they don't think it's important. They don't think it's important. They're quite happy with the way it is. You know, the politicians say that they think English is important, but they don't do anything about it. The way it's taught, every time these studies come out and show how bad the score is, how Japan's ranks dropped again, they either don't respond to it at all, or they'll respond to it. Sorry guys. Or they'll respond to it with some sort of half-hearted thing, like those examples I gave before about, oh, we're going to make people do tests. They're big believers in testing. They seem to think that if you make people do tests, that improves their education, which of course it doesn't, right? All it does is shows how poor they are. It doesn't improve the learning. Obviously, sorry guys, I'm sorry. So obviously what they should do is they should look at those European and Asian countries in the top 10 of English ability that we showed you earlier. You might have to go back to that to see which the top 10 are, but if they look at those, one's Singapore, there's a whole bunch in Northern Europe. If they look at those 10 countries and say, what's the difference? Why is it that their English is so good and ours is so bad? And learn something from them. But they don't do that. They've never done that. Oh, fuck. I'm sorry guys. Shut up. It's a Japanese Navy. It raves on unimportantly. But they never do that. You never hear them do that. You never hear anybody stand up and say, listen, our English ability is still continuing to fall. We need to do something about it. We're going to send some people over to Europe to study how they learn English and improve how we do it. You know, but they don't. Because that's not how they think. That's not how they think. What they think is that, you know, what we're doing is fine, and they'll just keep doing what they're doing and throw in a few more tests. Maybe that'll help. And it just doesn't. You know, we've talked to you guys before about what the English lessons are like. talk to you guys before. The first one that's talking is the Navi. The second one that's talking is the ETC system, right? Because we're coming up on a toll booth. Yeah, we've talked to you guys before about something that I've forgotten because I've been interrupted by those two talking things again. School system. The school system's terrible. They don't do any English communication at all in the school system. The most they do is stuff like the teacher says hello and all the kids say hello, and then the teacher says, how are you? And all the kids say together, I'm fine, thank you, and you. We've been to our kids' school a few times and happened to stumble on their English lesson, and it's just terrible. It's terrible, and usually the teacher can't speak English and is just doing it from a textbook, so the pronunciation's really bad, and then they all repeat the same pronunciation really, really badly, and then don't really understand what they're saying anyway. So the school system, those of you, there'll be lots of people in the comment section who live in Japan who'll vouch for this. It's just the school system for learning English is absolutely useless. It's not taught like a communication thing, it's taught like a memorization thing. Let's all memorize English, which is obviously impossible, right? They don't bother to learn the meaning of anything really. You know, they'll get the Japanese, this word in English means this in Japanese. Here's the katakana pronunciation. So stop. Sutopu, sutato, katakana pronunciation, right? Just terrible. So anyway, we're going about that. We've gone on about that over the years, again and again, how poor the Japanese education system is in relation to English, which is a shame really, because when they want to learn something, they can be best in the world when they want to learn something. So if the Japanese government was serious and really wanted everybody to learn English really well, they could do it, but they don't want it. So in summing up, they don't want to. That's what it is. The people don't want to, they don't think it's important. The Japanese government say they think it's important, but they don't really. So that's the bottom line. They don't want to learn English. So same as the Japanglish, people often say, why is it... I'm going to shut her up, guys. Some people say, why is it that the Japanglish is so bad? Why don't they do something about it? Because they don't care. That's the bottom line. They don't care. So anyway, that's enough of that for now. No doubt sometime in the next couple of years they'll drop down to the 100th level and we'll make another video about it then. It will happen. They're not going to improve or they don't change anything. So, but again, we don't care. We're happy. But it is why we made the English Friendly directory though, because there are some English Friendly businesses usually owned by foreigners. So that's why we made the directory. We accept it the way it is, but we like to make a list of all the English Friendly ones because it makes life easier for some people. Anyway, that was that. More videos coming soon.